So, looks like 2 packages. I believe this smaller one is non-anime DVD. Yeah, it's Donkey Kong Country Returns, so we can put that aside. And this bigger box go. Nice and simple. Over here we have another non-anime thing, GoldenEye 007, the Golden Controller Special Edition, I guess. And this week's anime DVDs. So let's real quickly get over these. We've got Kurokami Part 4, which may be the end of it. Yeah, it goes up to an episode 24, so this might be the last DVD in that. We've got Ghost Sweeper Mikami. And at one point I would have said she has very Sonic the Hedgehog-like eyes. Something about them reminded me of it, but I guess it's not a uni-eye thing. Anyways, I know that got delayed and passed to another company. Here we have Sekirei, which I thought was a different anime when I heard this was coming out, but it's still good, I think. And then Fist of the North Star TV series Volume 2, which goes up to episode 72. And I still haven't watched the first one yet. I know I'll get around to that eventually. Of course, that wasn't everything I got this week. You know, the Mysterious Cities of Gold Deluxe version arrived. Of course, the deluxe version appears to be the only one. You can buy the non-deluxe version for $150, but why do that? The only problem is one of these discs isn't reading right, so I have to solve that problem. Naturally, I have the rest of Sonic X arrived, Saga 2 and Saga 5 or Season 5. I don't know if they use Saga or Season interchangeably. Then I got Sonic the Hedgehog the movie. Well, I think I mentioned this was ordered. I think this is the second release which has both versions. I don't know if the first one has the original Japanese dub. And then, surprisingly, the big update for this week, Pokemon DVD 47, also known as the third DVD of Season 9. This is now the most valuable DVD in my collection. I spent about $500 on it. My bank account is hurting because of that, but that's okay, because this was an important DVD to acquire. There's a Zolly Adventure in its place in the series. Only one DVD left, assuming y'all can see the double gold here. And once I have that, I'll have all of Pokemon Season 3. So I'll probably celebrate this by watching Season 2. So first up and inside the box is Kodocha. And I bought the 13 individual releases for this. It was a pretty amusing series. It kind of started off in a weird foot where I wasn't sure if I was going to like the rest of it. But then it kind of got over that part and just continued being funny, silly, eccentric. Occasional drama thrown in here and there, I think. It's difficult to remember because each of these were released like 2 months apart, so I watched this over the course of a year. So I can't remember all the details. But, unfortunately, the 13th DVD release only goes up to episode 51. So it doesn't have all of the series. All of the series hasn't been released, unfortunately. I guess because it wasn't selling well. Here's a big one, Evangelion. These are the DVDs that started the collection. It's possible I had a couple of movies beforehand, but I know that at one point I said to myself, how could somebody buy a series on DVD? DVDs are meant for movies. It was a very silly thing to think. But then Evangelion was just too good for me to pass up. I think nowadays a lot of people go back to it and don't care as much about it. And I guess that's understandable. It's a question of whether or not it's aged well, and that's what the rebuilds are for. Anyways, the 8 episodes of the TV series, and then the Death and Rebirth movie, and the End of Evangelion movie. But of course, I don't have just those. I also have the thin DVD box set version of the Platinum Edition, which I consider a necessity if you're an Evangelion fan, because, well, if you only have the original, that's pretty good. This one has additional content, director's cut versions of a couple of episodes, cleaned up video, all that good stuff. Also, I think the subtitles check actually works right on this one, whereas the first couple of DVDs and the old one don't. And then I got the first Evangelion rebuild, Evangelion 1.01, You Are Not Alone. And inside this sleeve, it looks exactly the same. And then I also got 1.11. I can't remember if I have watched it to see what the differences are. This one's actually in more of a... It's a 2-disc setup. It's got an insert in it. Now that I mention it, I can't remember if I've ever looked in this. But y'all know better than I do, because maybe y'all remember when I got it. And last but not least, Shuffle, which was a pretty interesting series. There are some problems with it that make it, not bad, just not as spectacular as I would have initially hoped. But overall, it was a fairly enjoyable, simple little series. I think it was simple. At this point, I guess I can't remember. Oh well. So my vacation has been busy enough that I haven't had a lot of time to, I haven't been constantly watching anime. I've been doing a lot of anime-related stuff, but it's stuff that I can't really update about very easily because it's just boring things like cleaning the room and catching up on projects. I'm not even sure if I've got a complete list of everything I've watched, but I do know that I watched Urusei Yatsura movies 5 and 6. I don't think I mentioned 5 last time. They were okay. Not super wow spectacular like the second movie. So basically they're just like good longer episodes pretty much. I also watched a short movie of an anime short called Kaku Renbo, Hide and Seek, which I had never watched before. I think I mentioned it in last week's update. That was pretty interesting. Nothing spectacular from certain points of view, but from that, if you go into it knowing you're going to watch a short that's basically just a short, then it's actually pretty good. I guess it's hard to say what I'm thinking. I guess I'm thinking it doesn't have like this compelling overall story. It's just this compelling short little plot. So it's pretty interesting. I also watched the first disc of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood Part 2, and that's when Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood actually starts getting really interesting if you watch the original Fullmetal Alchemist. Basically, the first 13 episodes of Brotherhood are covering a lot of material that was covered in the original, done slightly different ways, but it's the kind of situation where you can't help but compare to the previous one, and maybe some of you like it more, maybe some of you like it less, but in a nutshell, you're still comparing if you've seen the old one and you're watching the new one. In addition, it seems like they made them knowing that people watched the old one, so, it's going to be a different experience, but Part 2... episodes 14 on, I think, is when it starts getting really interesting. The friend I watched it with, he's not the kind of person that usually declares something to be his favorite, but he's basically considering some of this stuff to be so exciting that he'd consider favoriting some of it. So it's definite. If all you did was watch the first part of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood and you weren't wowed, I'd suggest moving on to the second part, giving it a try, because that's when it starts getting good in its own unique way. Really great. Finally, let's see. I watched the Battle Athletes OVA. It was... I had a lot of trouble buying a lot of it. The overall story, the plot requiring technology 1,000 years in the future to be retarded, I guess. For example, no security cameras in very important control rooms that can completely modify the way outcome events happen, and locks disabling because of electrical glitches, and things that just don't seem to make much sense. Also, the entire idea that I guess people went to World War III and everybody decided to just forget about the Olympics for 1,000 years or something like that. I don't know. I found the OVA to be not very convincing. In addition, the main character is supposed to be one that looks like a pretty average person who pulls these super-powered athletic capability out of nowhere. And we're basically not given a reason to think that she can pull any powers out of nowhere in the OVA. It's possible the OVA, I think it started releasing after the TV series ended, but before the TV series finished, that maybe they were expecting people to watch the TV series first and then the OVA version second or something like that. But in a nutshell, you know, I just felt like it had a lot of convincing to do that it didn't to do. Now the TV series, on the other hand, has actually done everything right as far as I can tell. I'm not at the very end, but even characters that I hated in the first OVA are pretty damn cool in the TV series, in my opinion. So if you watch the OVA but not the TV series and thought that they had some good ideas but they executed it poorly, give the TV series a try because it's been pretty good so far. The only question is, are the last two DVDs satisfying? And that's all I have to watch. So I apologize in advance if any of y'all were hoping to watch my video during your Thanksgiving, or if you're overseas during my Thanksgiving, I guess. Truth is, I did try to upload the video last night, but it was slightly too long, so I'm going to have to just not talk about pretty much everything I talked about. Just leave it simply as, so far this week's been pretty busy. I'm hopefully going to be able to complete everything, straighten everything up, and have everything prepared for showing y'all the room. I'll probably record it over the weekend if I'm successful during this week. Otherwise, I think one interesting thing I mentioned just before in the previous version of this video was the 3TB hard drive y'all saw me purchase. If you've been curious about it, you've heard maybe that they don't work. Well, here's basically what I found out. I plugged it in using it on a Linux environment, Ubuntu specifically. It worked no problem. But the only issue was when I tried to partition it, the MS-DOS partitioning scheme, which is what I've just defaulted to because I had no clue what it was. Well, that basically errored out saying that 3TB is too big for it to handle. So that's probably what's not handled, and I would guess that BIOSes require that kind of partitioning scheme. Otherwise, you're pretty good. Anyway, just keeping things short here so that this is under the 15-minute mark. Yeah, I hope y'all had a nice Thanksgiving, even if it wasn't a holiday for you. And I will talk to you next week. Hopefully, the release will be okay because of the Pokemon DVD, my bank account is a little on the low side, so I might not be able to pad next week's release. We'll have to see. Anyways, see y'all next week.